Verification is going to be one of the really hard things for agents.
If you are doing anything from docs to actually writing code,
at this point, we can write a ton of codes very fast. You can load a code base in 10 minutes. But what we can do extremely well yet is verification.
They're not great right now at dependency management.
I think an interesting thing to mention, though, is that
everybody say G is for agents. There we go. Let's invite our incredible panelists to the stage. We've got Aparna, Erik, and Michele. Give it up for them, folks. We're going to be talking about coding agents for the next 20 minutes. Erik, I'm going to kick it over to you first. Is the command line all we need?
I would say the command line is all the agent needs, but I think the human and agent together needs more to review what the agent does. So we chose to build Claude code inside a terminal because it's actually the common denominator for what every engineer uses. No matter like what IDE you're using, everyone also has a terminal open, and that's what we wanted to go for and work with people no matter what IDE they're in. I usually have Claude code running in a terminal and then also have an IDE open to kind of code review the work as it goes.
I like that. I feel like you all have other thoughts.
I can take a stab at this one. So, first of all, I just want to say coding agents are the shit. Everyone's using them. I think if you are doing anything from docs to actually writing code, I mean, I can't tell you how many teams right now are literally their product documentation is they have a ton of cursor rules, just defining every time feature rolls out, actually putting rules to make sure that automatic documentation rolls out. My honest take is that CLI is not everything. It's exactly for what you said. I think as a human, being able to understand and debug what went wrong, what was the agent thinking? Oh, it made these edits to these files. Why? And when it doesn't work, it's just the IDE experience as a human building with these coding agents helps me build trust in ultimately what the output is. I mean, it's not just input, output, it's reasoning these days. And so that reasoning, having that IDE experience is just like that. I don't see that going away.
Okay, let's keep it moving. You almost went into the challenges. We're not going to go there yet. I want to get into the abstraction layers and how you think about the right abstraction layer. Michele, maybe you have some thoughts on what level we should be playing at.
I think it depends on the user that you have in mind. So I understand why Claude Code is on the CLI. It's specifically for developers. The less technical a user is, I think the more the abstraction layer goes up. And what we're building, for instance, I try to hide as much as possible the fact that there is an agent behind it. My ultimate goal is to drop agent from the name as soon as possible. Like it's just Replit, you know what it does. And the fact that behind it is running LLMs, is doing agentic workflows, it shouldn't really matter for the vast majority of our users. We call it agent today so that I can come to here and meet people that are agent builders, but eventually I think we're going to drop the name and keep it as abstract as we can.
So it won't be the biggest buzzword of 2026?
It's going to stick around for a while longer, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that before I hit it with another question?
I think verification is going to be one of the really hard things for agents. And I think like different kinds of verification need different abstraction levels. So the best case is where you don't need to look at the code at all. You can just use the interface, you see the output, and you can see that it's correct. But if it's something deeper where you don't have that, then you do need like the lower level abstraction.
How do you do verification well? How have you seen it done well?
I think this actually just gets back to like core good software design of like building your system so that there's separation of concerns and understandable and interpretable like outputs between different modules. And that's basically everything that would help a junior engineer write good code is what helps an agent write good code.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think to unlock the next level of autonomy is not only going to be about LLMs becoming more powerful, because they inevitably going to be the case in the near future. We need to crack verification correctly. At this point, we can write a ton of codes very fast. You can blow the code base in 10 minutes. But what we can do extremely well yet is verification, which is a separate conversation we can have. It's going to last hours. But I think most of us are going to be focusing on that in the near future, on the coding agent side.
I think one of the things that I've seen teams do is start to be really specific about what files they want the agent to actually touch, because the sprawl, especially in especially legacy code bases and large code bases, is that you start touching files and you've made all these changes, but now they don't work well together. I also think they're not great right now at dependency management. So it says, install this, but then there's like a circular dependency problem. And so I just come back to also, how do you build really good for code, really good unit tests, really good, as the LLM is writing actual code, also building tests alongside it to verify what it wrote. So that's a really good eval for coding agents is, does it improve the quality of the code and improve the catching of the edge cases as it's building?
Yeah, I always wondered about evals. I always thought about a great eval for coding agents is the code still in production after X amount of time? So if it was just something that built some technical debt, it got you up there really quick, and then later you were like, well, you got to refactor that. That's one type. But if it still is there maybe 6 months later, either you haven't looked at it and you don't care that much, or maybe it's pretty valuable.
Yeah.
Moving on though, because you touched on it, debugging. Let's get into that. How do you think about debugging in a world of coding agents? How do we look at that? Who wants to jump in on it first?
Okay, I'll take my first stab at this. I think debugging with a human is maybe a different element than debugging with like another agent. When you're debugging with a human, having readable code is so much more important than having readable code is more important than just having code that is, super, well written with all the intricacies of that language. So I think an eval on readable code is important. I also think latency, how much latency does the code that an agent add to your application is not something we're thinking about right now, but it can be pretty damn slow unless you ask it to think about how to write this in a more optimized way. So those are the evals I think about when I'm building.
I would love for someone to make an eval for like readable code and high quality code and have some way to measure that. Anthropic would love you if you do that.
Yeah.
Not just you, it's Anthropic.
Everyone there, yes. Maybe the one thing I'll add on debugging is like, yes, vibe coding works, vibe debugging does not yet work. I think an interesting thing to mention though is that there's like a few new primitives that are now at our disposal that weren't before, and they don't always work, but when there is a bug, I can just delete everything and tell it to write it again. And like, that would be insane to ask a human to do, but sometimes it works and it takes 5 minutes and like that'll actually resolve my bug sometimes. So again, it's like these very different techniques, and I think this is all about like adding different tools to our tool belt of how to resolve problems. But I agree we're a little bit in the hole for this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there will be also new tools that are going to be born because of coding agents. So we had debuggers for decades. Debuggers are not meant for agents, they're meant for humans. It's very hard to put GDB or PDB in the loop with a coding agent. And you see that the dev tool chain is evolving over time to be like more AI friendly. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we see that happening also for debuggers. And I think it's an open research question. So if I nurse night anyone, I hope they're going to be working on that.
I like that vision.
Can I add one more thing here? I think one of the things that Cursor added is pretty interesting is that ability to point context to a specific file in a repo and limit looking at that context to be able to build something is actually a pretty big UX shift, because I'm now not asking it to look at everything in my context and all of my files. I'm being very focused about what context to look at while debugging, and that's been super helpful when fixing problems.
The other thing that I want to think about when debugging is the whack-a-mole problem. I fix one thing, but then all of a sudden my code doesn't run and it changed a lot, and now I have to go back and ask it to change it, and it changed what I asked it to change it, but then something else doesn't run, and you get into this loop of constantly going through that. Have you all found tricks to get out of that loop, or is it just that's when you need to stop vibe coding and you need to actually work?
Yeah, that's when I stopped vibe coding. And I think I'm very strategic about thinking about like the trunk and branches of my code base versus the leaves at the end. And I think the leaves, like the leaf nodes that nothing else depends on, are the best places to vibe code. But the core kind of logic and trunk of your code, like that needs to be really high quality and really well understood. And that's a much more dangerous place to vibe code.
I think vibe coding is an art that not many people have grasped correctly yet. And it doesn't surprise me that a very strong developer is also good at vibe coding. It's a pain that we suffer daily at Replit because most of our users are non-technical and are getting used to vibe coding as we speak. I don't think that we have a good trick to fix that. We have a patch around it, which is having built a very extensive rollback user experience. So like every time you make an action, you can basically roll back at different points in time. We show you instant previews, so you can always see what you did back in the past and decide when you want to teleport yourself back in time. So it's not the solution on how to avoid the guacamole, but at least it's a way to avoid that through UX. And hopefully over time, everyone is going to learn how to vibe code correctly.
Michele, you also touched on the future and how you feel like some things will have to come into being. Certain products are going to come up because we're leaning on coding agents so much. Are there other pieces of this puzzle now that we are now thinking about using coding agents much more, and it's getting a lot more code into production from many different users? What are you seeing the future being in the world where there are so many vibe coders?
I think coding agents are just the beginning, and code is by far like the most flexible tool you can have in your tool belt. You can literally build any software out there with code, right? So the moment coding agents will be the tide that lift all the boats, and we're already starting to see on our product people building agents with Replit Agent. And it will happen more and more. Like any type of artifact that you can create with software will be automated and built by coding agents. And there will be like an abundance of how many solutions will be built with software. So I think this is just the foundation on which a lot more will be built over the years.
And are there certain things that we should start thinking about doing or that are good practices? I think about like how we almost want to be, you were talking about these cursor giving very specific files to add as context. You also have, you want to almost give like glossary terms. You want to be making sure that if you are adding anything, you have the proper context around it. What are other pieces that you're like, oh, I always do that now because it helps things run much better?
I think one of the things in Codex that we've started, I really thought was interesting, was that architectural overview of what your repo looks like. And I actually think that when teams start to use agents more as thinking about them almost like a teammate, do they end up becoming like your on-call engineer? Imagine if all of your on-call engineers were agents and they woke up at night and they fixed bugs instead of you guys waking up. How would you onboard them? Well, would you onboard them just like you onboard a new engineer, giving them that architectural overview so that when they go add code, they don't just have context of that specific part of the repo, but they have context of your entire code base and what the system's going to do. So I think writing these types of files for agents to onboard themselves onto a code base is going to become something we see. And I also think this is a little boring, but I think really good tests that you can let, if you think about an agent almost like an intern joining your team, write as much code, but it's got to pass these tests. It makes it, you start having just a robust place to vibe code.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. And I think it's getting the boring things right, of having good documentation, good tests. But the silver lining is that we now have agents to help with those things. And so the agents can help write tests, they can help search your code base and then create that architecture diagram that then you review. Make sure to review it. But yes.
Okay, so I feel like one big thing that is on everyone's mind when we talk about the future are long-running tasks. And when you think about, I can just let the agent spend a week doing something. What gets you excited when you think about agents being able to spend weeks at a time on certain tasks?
I mean, I would love if I just keep coming back to this idea of an on-call agent or reliability agents, where things that you just want to optimize over a long period of time, it can actually do and work on database migrations. That'd be freaking sick. But I think what does also make me nervous, though, is am I going to put it on something, come back to it, and throw it all away? And so I don't know if I totally trust long-running agents today. I would also want to trust the reasoning that's going on. Like with a human, I get status updates. What's happening? What are they working on? How are they thinking about the problem? So it'd be nice if there was a view into what's happening in the with these long running tasks.
Almost like a Jira board. You can track the task.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think that just like a human employee, even if you give them a week-long task, they're not going to go silent for a week. They're going to be asking questions on Slack. They're going to be posting updates saying, hey, here's my approach. Anyone have other ideas? And I think maybe what we need to get to is a paradigm where the agent can work for a week, but it can also ask for these things, and it doesn't get stuck and blocked as soon as it has a question. It's more of async asking for help. You wouldn't want an intern that as soon as they have a question, they post it and they just stop and don't do anything else until someone gets back to them. You want them to keep trying or do other things in parallel. And I think that getting to a world where agents can both ask for help and keep working is going to let us get the best of both worlds.
All right, Michele, I'm going to you. This is the lightning round. We're finishing it up. What is one thing that agents do not do well yet? Coding agents specifically. What would you not let them be doing?
I don't think we're there yet for verification and testing. I think we're much behind compared to generating code. Hence why all the jokes about the slop that vibe coding generates. We're very good at creating a lot of slop. We are not that good at refactoring. We're not that good at testing. We're not good at what allows you to maintain code bases for a longer span of time. So that's what I would love to see a lot of effort happening in the next months.
To not say the same thing, a few weeks ago, I asked Claude Code to plan a date for me and my wife. And it did a decent job. It used some web searches. It wrote a nice markdown file of the plan. But it didn't have a phone to actually call and make a restaurant reservation. So that was, yeah.
Yeah, or order the Uber at the time that you want to go and then figure out some after-hour activities. Aparna?
I mean, I think one of the things we've been kind of hinting in here is we're actually all talking about different personas. I think there's probably, Michele, what you're talking about, slightly less technical users who are trying to use coding agents. And then, I don't know, Erik and I feel like maybe we're talking a little bit more about that technical user base. I think agents right now, there's so much that as a technical user, you have the tools to understand the reasoning and et cetera to debug these agents. I don't know if they're totally there for non-technical users. So
they're not.
Yeah. So maybe that's what you're building.
There, but yeah, it's going to take a while. Yeah.
That's probably what you're building.
There's the truth.
For things like games, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my answer.
Folks, that's it for the talks. We've still got, yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it for them. We've still got the booths rocking for another hour if you want to go and talk to people that are building agents. I would be remiss to say, funny enough, Aparna was talking about an SRE agent, and I think these guys over here, Cleric, are actually doing that. So talk to them. Talk to all of them. We've got lightning talks going on in the Databricks room, and the other 2 rooms are still open. So hope you all been enjoying. We will see you soon. Bye.